710 on your dial.
Sorry to hear this. We have a little note here from United Press, AP rather. Mrs. Robert Saunders, Milwaukee, 49, said her husband has been missing since he walked out the door in 1962 in search for a beer. He just went out. He said, I'm going out for a beer, baby. And he just never come back. So she's now getting a divorce. Incidentally, that was in Milwaukee. And the judge, as you know, they make a lot of beer in Milwaukee. The judge says, you know, it shouldn't take 9 years to get a beer in Milwaukee. Obviously, there's something. Whoever that guy is tonight, I hope he found his beer. But we have another little note here. Let's see. Animals, of course, are causing people trouble these days. Everywhere around the world. Animals, you know, we think that only man is changing, of course. But animals have been changing tremendously. And yes, as a matter of fact, in many ways, that they find that in Africa, for example, animals have been acting differently than they have up to this time. Like eating people when ordinarily they didn't, and you know, various other goodies. But for those of you who are curious about what's happening, the Navy has been sending out all kinds of distress signals that just recently they have discovered that 90% of the major ships of the U.S. Navy are now totally infested with cockroaches. Millions of cockroaches. And that was up to this point, they knew there was a few around, but now it's a whole big thing. So everything is changing everywhere, and I'd like to salute a goat here in Houston, a goat in an amusement park in Houston. He says, this goat is really causing trouble. For example, the head man out there, Bill Ellsworth, according to the note here, says, we quote, he says, this goat ate a $10 bill that just was accidentally dropped by a visitor. The goat grabbed it and ate it up. And as he was talking on the phone about this goat, a guy says, quick, Ellsworth, the goat is now eating the telephone wire of the telephone ladies. Well, I just want to say that the only reason I'm bringing this up is that if you think man is going to hell in a handbasket. What is a handbasket, by the way? I've heard that expression many times. Man is going to hell. You've ever heard that expression? Man is going to hell in a handbasket. Well, I just wanted to bring to you, as part of our vast public service programming, since Christmas is now just over the horizon, and already you can probably feel in your own gut the Christmas anxiety, which is beginning to grow. practically every Christmas, I can almost every day, like for the last 2 weeks before Christmas, I hear the two things. Hey, in an elevator, some guy says, hey, you know, it just doesn't seem like Christmas this year. Now, how many times have you heard that in your lifetime? All right, you just figure out every year that you've been alive, and that's how many times you heard it, right? Every year. You know what's funny about this year? Just Christmas doesn't seem like Christmas this year. And that you hear. The next comment you hear also is this one, often by the same guy. You know, I'll be glad when the holiday season is over. Return back to normal. I know it's not popular to say it, but I'll be glad when it's all over, you know. How many times you heard that one, right? That's right, the same number of times you heard the first one. So I suspect that there are great stresses in our inner psyche at any time that a major holiday is approaching. And I have my suspicions why. I'm letting that soak. Herb, will you please? So tonight, as part of our vast public service programming here on this totally involved medium of communication, we would like to take the opportunity to salute the infinite complexity of man's inner psyche. Or God knows where it'll all end. Hold it there now, hold it there. Yeah, for example, I just got a letter here from a guy. He says, this is letter night. He says, I don't know what's happening, Shep. I don't know what's happening in this world anymore. The other day while I was cutting out of school, I saw this guy lift up the hood of his car, open a bottle of Diet Pepsi, and pour it into his radiator. Diet Pepsi. Says, what is there in this? Is there some unusual qualities of Diet Pepsi I don't know about? But that's true. He says, there it is. I don't know. Maybe if you're a backyard chemist, you may tell us what Diet Pepsi does in your radiator. I don't know. But it is happening everywhere. And I have a note here. Now, I don't know whether this is a gag or not. I mean, the name is a gag. But somebody sent me this clip here, and I know the Wall Street Journal just did a big piece on me. I admit it, and I take, there it is. But some guy in today's mail just sent me this clipping out of the Wall Street Journal, which is a totally different story, and I want to read part of it to you because, the minute I started to read this thing, I thought, oh my God, is that true? Oh, man. It's a story that says Christmas is coming. So be of good cheer and keep your guard up. And here's the subtitle. You may end up hitting a fist with your jaw and eating your meal through a straw. Okay, and it's written by Jeffrey A. Tannenbaum. Now, that's what I think is the gag. Tannenbaum. Oh, Tannenbaum, Tannenbaum, It's one of those nutty coincidences, though. Guys tend to... I've seen 1,000 coincidences with names like that. Like, what better name for a plunging fullback than Ronnie Bull? And that's the name of a fullback that plays pro football, right? Ronnie Bull. There's thousands of names of that type. But here's the piece. It says, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Yup, Merry Christmas. Increasingly these days, that is the holiday message folks are exchanging. That's because, increasingly these days, folks are greeting each other through broken jaws and teeth wired together. Now, why is that? Well, it's Christmas time. And that's the time of the year when a lot of guys seem to hit other guys in the fist with their chins. Now, you may doubt that, but a painstaking survey of merrymakers, oral surgeons, and most important, bartenders, reveals that without a doubt, more people get socked in the chops by other people at Christmas than on Groundhog Day or St. Swithin's Day or St. Patrick's Day or any other day of the year. Did you know that? That is a fact. More violence around at Christmas time in bars and stuff. Not just robbing type violence. I'm talking about just guys hitting other guys. Boy, he says there's something about all the frivolity and eggnog that brings out the violence of people. Mused Kenneth Callahan, a Cleveland oral surgeon who has laid in a lot of equipment, a lot of catgut and stuff for stowing up guys and stuff. He's laid in a lot of material. He's all ready for his big Christmas rush. He says it's the biggest time of the year for jaw fractures, said the good doctor. He's got all his stuff laid out. He's waiting for him to start coming in. Dr. Callahan is, of course, a man dedicated to alleviating the sufferings of his fellow human beings. And you might think he'd take all those broken jaws seriously. You might think that, unless you heard him describing some of the cases he's treated. You want to hear some of the great Christmas cases the doctors treated? He recalls with particular relish the patient who came in 2 years ago after a brawl during a game of pinball bowling. The barroom game wherein players slide a metal puck along a table at the pins. You've ever seen that? Slide that little puck along there. The man's assailant, the doctor says, quote, knocked out the 4 front upper teeth with the bowling puck, and he left the 2 eye teeth. It looked just exactly like a 7-10 split. Then he knocked the guy down and went after the spare with his foot. Yeah, wouldn't be so funny. Listen to this. Other oral surgeons around the country share Mr. Callahan's bent for sports analogies. Dr. Kenneth Klein of Wheeling, West Virginia, who says he's always up to his elbows in busted jaws during the holidays. If you know anything about Wheeling, they got a lot of those year in and year out, but it gets better at Christmas. He likes to tell of a patient he got last year. This is last Christmas. The patient had a knife. Unfortunately for him, the other guy had a ball bat. And we quote, they met in the alley in back of their houses, and the guy with the ball bat won. He hit a 3-bagger across the other guy's face, Dr. Klein says. Now, you may think you'll avoid a broken jaw this year by being nonviolent. You know, a lot of people think if they're nonviolent, nothing will happen to them. Good luck. That's a good line. It says, good luck. Dr. Callahan tells of a steel salesman who got tanked up at an office party last year and decided to deck his boss. The man's wife managed to get her husband away from the office before he landed a blow, but she took him to a bar, where then he broke her jaw with 1 blow. He felt she got what she deserved for popping off, the doctor says. Oh, man, that's not uncommon. Sometimes the husband hits the wife at home, says Dr. Klein of Wheeling. Of course, they say she simply fell down the stairs, and even though there's an impression of his ring on the side of her cheek, usually the truth is that she fell down the stairs when he hit her. That's the way it actually worked. Ted White-Eyes, a Sioux Indian, who is almost as much an expert on bone-crunching blows as Dr. Klein, agrees that Christmas time is the best time of the year for losing teeth. Mr. White-Eyes is a bartender at a Cleveland saloon called Hillbilly Ranch. Stay out of that joint. I'll tell you, fights break out there almost every night of the year, but during the holiday period, it gets worse, he says. Customers, and we quote, keep taking pills and drinking, and pretty soon they're out of their mind, and they start blowing each other away with fists, knives, bar stools, or whatever's handy, including beer bottles. Mr. White-Eyes isn't predicting how this Christmas will turn out, but he says the highlight of last Christmas, when he was setting them up in a Christmas in the Chicago tavern, was the time an unruly patron, quote, wouldn't leave, so I helped him out by whacking the man in the jaw with a ball bat and calling an ambulance. Breaking somebody's jaw with your fist isn't easy. You have to hit a guy who doesn't know what's coming, says Kenny, a husky construction worker who hangs out at the Hillbilly Ranch between hitting people. Kenny allows that although he has landed solid blows on a dozen or more jaws, he has managed to break only 2 of them, not counting his own. Somewhere in Tennessee, he recalls, my jaw got caught between a knee and a banister. I sure got tired of drinking milkshakes through a straw, which I did for many weeks afterwards. His jaw got caught between a banister and a knee. Indeed, a broken jaw is more memorable than, say, a broken arm. It usually requires a few days in the hospital, regular visits to a jaw doctor thereafter, and walking around with your upper and lower teeth wired together for weeks. Hell of a good way to go on a diet, says J. Donald Hensler, an oral surgeon in Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania. Hollidaysburg is, of course, a suburb of Altoona. The safest bet may be just to stay home from December 1st through the New Year's. Hole up. Marvin, a Cleveland systems analyst, was driving home from work a few days before Christmas 2 years ago when another car almost sideswiped him, and Marvin was forced to drive into a tree. Then 3 men piled out of the other car and hurried toward Marvin. Quote, I presume they were walking back to see if I was hurt, Marvin says. Marvin presumed wrong. The 3, quote, proceeded to use me for a punching bag, broke his jaw. Even now, Marvin says wonderingly, I have no idea whatever why the beating occurred. Marvin had to spend Christmas watching his family eat turkey while he sucked the milkshake and soup through a straw. Sometimes you can break a guy's jaw and never know it. A Cleveland accountant recalls the time 2 years ago when an off-duty cop working as a parking lot attendant told him his car's muffler was too loud. I hit him in the mouth with my fist, says the accountant. Then I kicked him about 5 times in the face. I don't know if his jaw was broken, but it sure was hanging funny. But that's unusual. Authorities say most broken jaws are jaws that are well soaked in booze just prior to the breaking. And booze is more prevalent around Christmas, explains a New York psychiatrist, because people, quote, have a longing for love and warmth. However, there's another thing, by the way, is guys get broken fingers. It's a big time for broken fingers because you missed a guy and hit the wall, and you bust a finger. So now, it's funny reading this because I'd always suspected it. Have you ever seen any action on Christmas yourself? Well, one of the great, I'm serious, one of the great educational moments that I had in my life was one of the very first jobs I had, and they had a Christmas party, an office Christmas party. And I was a kid, see, and I was an office boy in this place, and naturally, I thought, gee, Christmas party's kind of groovy. Everybody sits around and Santa Claus comes in and gives us a new pencil sharpener and all that. The office Christmas party. Well, there I am at this party, and it started out. Now, I'm sure that somebody listening to me right now, somebody has had a terrible experience at a Christmas party. And I'm going to describe an actual scene that I saw at a Christmas party, and it's so classical now. As I've been to other Christmas parties now, I realize I'm talking about office Christmas parties. It is a very, very typical scene. And this is exactly what happened. If you happen to work in a place where there's only 2 or 3 people, they don't have office parties, like a big office Christmas party. I don't know whether you're missing something or not, but I suspect that you are. I think it's one of the great folk festivals. The office party is a separate kind of party. It really doesn't have much to do with parties like you have at home or the party down at the bowling alley. I'm talking about office parties. Now, to begin with, if you spend much time and have spent any time in an office, you know that there's a very, very complex social involvement between the people in the office. And it's like an iceberg, that only one tiny bit of it shows above the level surface of the water, right? And and a lot of it, if you're really innocent, you don't even know exists. You just think, a lot of guys come to the office and then they go home at night. Well, I'm not so sure, that there's all kinds of involvements, and a lot of it involves women. Now, almost every office has a large contingent of girls that range all the way from the elderly blue-haired ladies who work, for 45 years in Mr. Gutstop's office with those little yellow cards, or they range all the way down to those fantastic chicks in the pool, the steno pool, who've just, come cooling into this place, and man, they got glands coming on top of their glands, so you get some complex situations. Well, there I am. See, I'm working in this office, and I'm just an office boy, and I come in every day, and every day I'd sort the mail, and every day at a certain time, I was about 16, every day at a certain time I would go to this mimeograph machine. Well, actually, it was a ditto machine. You know, there's a ditto machine, a mimeograph, with the gelatin rolls and stuff. Yeah, and I used to work on this. I could work this mimeograph machine, and I could work the ditto machine, and I would turn out the morning report that came down from some other office, and was all made in this ditto ink, and I would make all these. You know, you have a whole routine, see. And every day at 10 o'clock, I would go into Mr. Snyder's office, and Mr. Snyder would say the same thing to me every morning. He was the big boss there. See, Mr. Snyder had this unapproachable, airy he lived in, like an eagle. And he had this great big desk, and he would sit behind this enormous desk, and he was always on the phone. And his desk would always impress me. It had absolutely nothing on it. It was absolutely clean. He was one of these executives who let all the detail work. Everybody in his office did all the work, and he would sit there at his desk and always call up. And about every day at 2 o'clock, he would leave and not come back anymore. It was really important, say, Mr. Snyder. And every morning I would come in at 10, and I would put Mr. Snyder's mail on the desk of the girl who worked for him, who was named Evelyn. Okay, the plot is beginning to thicken, right? And Evelyn, of course, you know, I was only 16, so Evelyn just was this tall, blonde girl. And I'd come in every morning, and I would lay the mail on the in basket of his little desk there, actually the girl's desk. And she had this intercom that would go into Mr. Snyder's office. And she was like in the front of his office. So every day she would be sitting there doing her nails. She did a thing like every morning. This is how office life gets to be very complex, and everybody has his own little way of doing things. So every morning she is sitting there at exactly the time I came. It was like she timed it. She's doing her nails. She's got this little thing. She's buffing away with her nails, and she's got her nail polish out. And I would come in, and I'd lay the mail on the desk, right? And she would just look up at me and never say anything. She never said a damn thing to me, one way or the other. She just sort of look up, and she'd go back to brushing her nails, because she paid no attention to office boys. Well, Mr. Snyder, sitting in his office, he always had his door open at that hour of the morning, because at 10 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Snyder would have his coffee. So he's sitting in there, and he's got his coffee, and sometimes there'd be another guy in the office, but generally he's just sitting there, and he's looking at the paper. He read the paper in the morning, so he's looking at the paper, and he's got his coffee. And he always said the same thing every morning to me. Every morning. And he thought it was funny. I don't know why certain guys pick up a phrase they think is funny. Like, hot enough for you? You know, there's certain guys will say that all the time to you. But Snyder would every morning say this. He'd say, "Morning, good morning." Now, he wasn't from the South, but he thought it was very funny to say, "Good morning." And he would say that, "Good morning." Then he would laugh, and I was supposed to laugh. So I'd say, "Good morning, Mr. Snyder. Good morning, good morning." And he'd go back to reading his paper, and I'd go out. Okay? So every morning, it was Mr. Snyder and Evelyn. Then I would go down the office corridor. They had a corridor, and all the other little offices would open up. And I would go in to this other office. There was a guy in there named Mr. Clevenger. Now, you want to hear this? Now we're getting complex. In Mr. Clevenger's office, these guys apparently had something to do with sales, because all the mail that they had that would come would say something like Clevenger Sales. He had about 6 other guys in the same office. Clevenger Sales. So I guess they had something to say. But they were always sitting around in there in their office, and they're on the phone, and they're dictating stuff. And I would come into Clevenger's office, and there was a girl sitting in there. And her name, in case you're curious, was Dorothy. So Dorothy is sitting in Clevenger's office, and I would give her the mail. Now, Dorothy was not the same as Evelyn. And there were all these different girls. But Dorothy now was a dark, short girl who looked kind of sneaky. And she's sitting there all the time every morning when I'd come in. And she'd look up at me, and she'd say every morning something funny. She always was saying funny things, and I never knew how to feel them. You know, when you're a kid, you don't know when you're being put on or not. And she'd say something funny like, "Oh, that's a very nice jacket." And she'd start to laugh. So I thought, oh, you know, somehow I felt like she's always putting me down. Well, Clevenger would get the mail. I'd put the mail on the desk, and Clevenger would get his mail. Well, I would make my route like that every morning from about 9 o'clock, from the time I got the mail to about quarter to 12, I'm handing out these little forms. And speaking of rats, it was a rat's nest, terrible. This is WOR New York. And before we do anything else here, we got a note from the Christmas Fund here. It's the WOR Christmas Fund, if you're wondering about whether you can attend Times Square Station, New York. And hey, listen, another. Please don't keep sending me these letters about this. I can't. There's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can do about it. I repeat. No, I have to make this public announcement. People keep writing to the station and asking me to order them a book. Now, of course, it's Christmas time. Apparently, a lot of people want a book before Christmas time, and they write to me and they ask me, "Well, I'm not in the business, and there's no way that I can get a book to your bookstore." So all I can say, if you've gone into your bookstore and they tell you they cannot get a copy of Wanda Hickey's Night of Golden Memories, don't write to me. Tell them why not. And if he says, "I never heard of it," go to a bookstore where they know about books. It's Doubleday, and it's a national seller. So if they don't have it in your store, that's because you go to a bad store. And that's all I can say. Please don't write to me, though. I can't answer the letters, and thank you for your comments, but I can't. All right. You know, I just can only tell you that was a trauma, that whole thing, because I had worked in this office for for months. And I went to say, I only worked in a summer. I got this summer job. And I worked there all that summer. And I got to know all these people. But they seemed very official to me. They were remote. And not really remote, because, there's a certain jovial attitude, too, in offices. You know what I mean by, there's a kind of, "How are you, buddy? Hello, Charlie. Hey, Charlie. Oh, my, wow. How are you, Charlie? You're getting fat, Charlie." In other words, there's a certain kind of a life in the office. That's all I can say. It's a kind of a little closed society, and everybody knew everybody else, and sort of, but not really. And they had these different departments, and I was the one guy that sort of linked them, because I would come in at 9 in the morning, and I would take the mail, immediately start separating it, and then I would take. There was always an envelope for me. It was never really addressed to me. It just said duplicating. See, I was duplicating. And there was this brown envelope that said duplicating. And in the envelope was a folded up 2 sheets of ditto typed paper. In other words, it was typed to be used as for the ditto machine. And I didn't even know what this stuff was. It was a long list of numbers. Just a lot of long list of numbers of production and stuff and various departments. It just was total Greek to me. But all I had to do every morning, immediately after sorting the mail, was to break out my ditto machine, and I would put this thing on the ditto machine, and I would turn out 47 copies of each of the 2 pages. I'm turning them out, see? And as you go down further down the turning out, as I run the machine, it would get fainter and fainter, until finally the 47th copy was sometimes so faint, it just looked like a little, you couldn't even read it. But it didn't matter. I made 47. I'd count it, tick, 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 tick. And because the counter was broken on my ditto machine, it never counted. So I had to count exactly 47 sheets. Then I would count out 47 sheets of the next one. Then I would take out my little staple machine, a little staple, see. And I would sit there at my little desk. I had a little metal desk. And I would take these 2, and I would clip them together, page 1 to page 2. I'm working away there, see. And every morning, I would make this little 2-page bulletin, at which point I would stack up all these little bulletins, and I would put it in my mail basket, which I carried around, including all the mail, which was all sorted, and I would put one of these little things on everybody's desk that I would deliver mail to. They would get one of these things. And I would notice that on at least half of the places where I would give them this thing, they never even looked at it. It would arrive on the desk, and it would lay there, and it would be there the next day until finally there would be about 15 of them all piled up, and then they'd throw them away, see, start out again. So it was at that point that I began to suspect the futility of most of the work that most of us do. 47 of these things I would turn on. I would guess probably 3 people would read them. So why didn't I just make 3 every morning? But that's the office. So every morning I would, and you don't question these things when you're a kid. You just sort of do it. So every morning I got my little mimeograph things, and my ditto machine has been red hot, and I got the little ditto papers all clipped together, and I have all the mail. And also my job was to stop by and this was after lunch then, I would stop by and they would give me an order for the stationery department. The office had one central place where they kept all their supplies, like paper clips, rubber bands, yellow pencils, number 2, Eberhard Faber. I knew all the stuff, number 3 ditto paper, number 5 Mimeo, and I'd get these Mimeo rolls and all that stuff. And then I would have to go down 3 stories down in the building to this guy that was in the stationery department. He had a cage, and I would come up to him, and every day he would say the same thing to you. Now what? He thought that was funny. He'd say, now what? And I'd go, how are you, Smitty? Now what? Let's see. Let's take a look at it. He was always bugged because I would bring these orders down. He'd take a look at the sheet, all the stuff written down. Say, okay, all right, hey, Heine. And he would hand it back to Heine, and I would wait for about 15 minutes, and then they would finally push it out the side of the cage, had a little door. They'd push it out, and it's on a cart. It had all this paper and stuff. And I would then push the cart into the freight elevator after having signed that I got all the stuff, and up I would go. At which point then I would take it over to this other guy, whose name, by the way, was Grant, Mr. Grant. And I would push my little cart over to Mr. Grant's place, and Mr. Grant would take all the material that I had ordered, checking it all off carefully, swearing all the time because they never sent him enough rubber bands, and that would be one of my afternoon chores. Every day I did this, okay? How many of you recognize this kind of routine? So I kind of dug it. I liked working there, and I got along, with everybody, and everything was fine. And now it is fall, and I go back to school. And it's like the office disappeared. It just no longer exists. I'm back in school. Well, I'm going to school every day I'm going to school. And the office sort of receded back into my memory, and it kind of disappeared. I just, that was last summer. That was the thing I did last summer. You just don't remember it. See, well, all of a sudden I come home one day. It was about like a week before Christmas. See, and it's just about Christmas vacation time. We used to have Christmas vacation would be like 3 days before Christmas, and they let us out of school for 2 weeks, which was fantastic. 2 weeks, and so it is just about that time. I come home from school. It's about a week before Christmas. I'm still in school now. I come home, and there was all kinds of. My mother by that time had the Christmas cards that began to arrive. She'd put them up on the windows, and she'd tack them up on the doors and that kind of stuff. And there was always a big pile of mail on the dining room table. My mother says, "Hey, there's a letter for you there. You got a card." I said, "Oh, I got a card." Because, I used to get cards once in a while, like a teacher would send out a Christmas card to all the kids in her class and that kind of stuff. And I didn't think anything of it, just another card. But it was stiff. It was like a Christmas card. It was one of those big white envelopes, stiff, see, and there was my name on it. So I just wiped, I opens it up, and I pulls it out, and it said that the office, the office of Amalgamated Whippersnapper Corporation, is having its annual Christmas party, and we are pleased to invite you to be one of the celebrants at the Christmas party, which is going to be held at the Bright Kentucky Hotel in the Orange Gentian Room at 7 p.m., December 23rd, just 2 days before Christmas. See, it's 7 o'clock, and it says, "Come one, come all, have a good time," and there was little Santa Clauses all over it, see. So I hadn't, here I am, see, I says, "Hey, Ma," she says, "What?" I says, "Hey, Ma, I'm invited to a Christmas party." She says, "Oh, really?" She says, "Flick's house?" I said, "No, look, Ma." And she looks at this thing, she says, "Oh, the office where you worked." I said, "Yeah. Gee, I think I'll go." She said, "Oh, yeah, absolutely, you should go to that. That sounds like fun. I'll probably have a Santa Claus and everything." I say, "Well, my mother, as far as I know, has never been to an office Christmas party, see? So I had never either. This is the first time it ever happened to me. So now I got my invitation to go to the Christmas party, right? Well, I figure, the thing you do, you get all dressed up, and so I did. The night arrives, and it's really a cold, bitter night, because, man, I want to tell you, out in the Midwest, certainly around the Great Lakes, that Christmas time, that's when the winter really starts getting mean. And I mean mean, really mean. In fact, one of the worst nights that I can ever remember, fantastic night, was the night a tremendous storm hit. When I was a kid, I must have been about, probably 10 or 12. And it's historic. Even to this day, it's kind of a historic storm. But it was one of the great storms of the year, and in fact of many years, hit on Christmas Eve. And it was so fantastic that I can remember looking out of the window, and it was a sleeting, tremendous snow, sleet, wind, really an evil night, but colder than, really cold. It was like down around zero, and this fantastic freezing sleet is coming down. Well, can you imagine looking out of the window? We had around there were high-tension wires. This town had some, these big towers went through, and big high-tension wires, that everybody was unbelievably scared because this ice and the sleet and the wind was so devilish and was so evil that the high-tension wires were getting loaded with ice. You could see the high-tension wires were so thick with ice, they looked like they were about 8 inches across. And it was breaking. The high-tension wires would break, and you'd see this great flash in the sky, just boom, this big, fantastic blue flash. And you'd see these wires exploding, coming down out there across this field. And in fact, it got so dangerous that at least a half dozen people were electrocuted that night, because these wires would fall down and the ground was wet and people were just simply electrocuted walking around on the ground. Well, it was wild. So this time of the year, it was really pretty rough. And I remember going out and say, I'm all dressed up now. I'm really dressed up. I got my new sport jacket, and I've got my new corduroy slacks, and I'm wearing a tie and a whole bit, and I got in the haircut, because, after all, I'm going to the office party. It's a very official party. So I have my invitation with me, and I got on a bus, and it was all kinds of people on a bus, and they were all coming home from work, and again, it was about 7 o'clock at night, just before Christmas. There were Christmas shoppers and stuff, and I'm on the bus, and I'm all dressed up, and I'm on my way to the Bright Kentucky Hotel, see? So I'd never been inside of a place like that, And I finally get off at my corner, and the wind is blowing, and it's cold, oh my God, and the snow is piling up, and down the middle of the block is this big, elegant hotel, which is kind of legendary, it's like going to the Waldorf or the Stevens or something, the Bright Kentucky Hotel, which incidentally is not its name. So I arrive at the Bright Kentucky Hotel, and I go into the lobby, and I'm just a kid. See, I don't know anything about this stuff. So I go into this lobby, and I don't know what I expected. I guess I expected them to be having the party right there in the lobby or something. So I walk in, and there's a lot of people with suitcases, and you know how it is in the lobby. And I'm standing around. And finally, a guy comes up and says, "What do you want, kid?" And because I apparently looked suspicious or something, just sort of standing around. And it was the house dick. He comes up and says, "What do you want, kid?" And I said, I'm supposed to go to this party. He says, "Well, what do you mean party?" He says, "There's 50 parties here in this hotel. What party are you going to?" So I reach in my pocket and I take out this invitation and I show it to him. He says, "Oh, that's up." He says, "That's up in the." He says, "That's in the mezzanine ballroom." He says, "Over on the second floor, you take the elevator right up, mezzanine ballroom." And he said, "Okay, kid." So, mezzanine ballroom, see. I never heard of mezzanine. That was something they had in the movie houses. See, I never knew they had mezzanines in buildings that weren't, showing movies. So, I go over and I get in line. There's a tremendous crowd going in the elevator. And I get into this mob, and up we go to the mezzanine floor. And I get off, and there's a lot of people up there, and there's cloakrooms and stuff like that. I'd never checked anything in my life. I didn't know what to do. I've got my sheepskin coat on and stuff. So I'm walking past this room with this little like a counter. See, this woman says, "Excuse me, sir. Excuse me." You know how they are. "Excuse me, sir." And I said, "Yeah." I figured, she was going to take my invitation or something. I figured she's official. Excuse me, sir. Check your coat, sir. Says, excuse me, sir. I didn't know anything about this, and so I said, yeah. So I take off my coat and I give it to her, and I give her my hat. And I had this corduroy hunting cap that I was very proud of in those days. I had the ear flaps in my corduroy cap. So I give her this cap, and she says, here, don't lose this check. So she gives me the check, one of these round things with the little metal board around little white tags, number 28 or something on it. She gives me the check, and I see I didn't know what to make of this. There was a platter there with all kinds of quarters on it. And this I didn't know. I figured maybe you take a quarter or something. It's because it looked like there were samples or some damn thing. I couldn't figure it out, so I start to walk away. I don't know what to do, and I start to walk away. I remember how embarrassing it was. And I got this little chick. She says, "Excuse me, sir." And I said, "Yeah. Excuse me, sir." And she didn't exactly say, "Where's the tip?" She just kept saying, "Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir." And other guys are hanging up coats now, and I see a guy take a quarter and he throws it in this dish. Well, I figured, so I'm supposed to put a quarter in the dish. So here I was, I had no money at all. I'm a kid, I don't have any doughs, and I didn't think in terms of bringing money to this party, except, I had like 30 cents for the bus. That's about it, see. So I reach in my pocket and I get my bus money. Remember, I'm like 2.5 miles away from home. So all I got is my bus money. So I get my bus money. I got like 30 cents. See, so I give her a quarter. I put it in the corner. She says, "Thank you, sir." Oh boy, little did I realize that I am now entering the world of the official people. I didn't know at the time. So I thought, what a racket that is. A quarter just to hang up my coat. Gee whiz, wow. So I go into the mezzanine grand ballroom, and it had this big glass doors, like grand ballroom. Chandeliers hanging, and I can hear this music, and I walk in, and there's this tremendous crowd of people. Now, I thought it would be, Mr. Snyder. I thought Mr. Grant would be there, Mr. Clevenger, and Evelyn, and Dorothy, and all those people. I see that I worked the office. But you see, what I didn't realize was this was like the whole outfit. There were like 9 floors, see, and I always thought my office is my office. That's it, see. Well, there's thousands of people. I sort of walk in there, and I'm a little embarrassed. I don't recognize anybody. And as I go through the door, there's a desk set up there, like a table, and there's 2 girls sitting there, and they've got the corsages and stuff. There's always 2 very busybody girls who takes care of all the stuff in an office like that. She says, "Excuse me, may I see your invitation? What department are you from?" So I'm from Mr. Snyder's office. "Oh, well, may I see your invitation, please?" So I give him the invitation, and she looks down the list, and how many times have you checked into something, and you've always had this sneaking fear that your name will not be on the list, and that everybody else, the official people, their name is always on the list, but your name is always somehow mysteriously left off? So I'm standing there, and this is the first time I felt that fear. Here I am, all of a sudden, she's looking for my name on the list. Now, I didn't even work there anymore. I didn't tell her that, though. So she looks down, and sure enough, yes, here, Mr. Snyder's office. Okay, she says, here, and she hands me something which was the first one I ever wore. And one of these little badges they give you? My name is Ralph Applerot, and I work in accounting. Who are you? Ha ha. And, had little wreaths and stuff like that, so I put the pin on. Now I got a pin, see? So I walk into this scene there. Well, it was tremendous, see, but it was a great big room, and I wasn't prepared in my mind for how big it was. And they had, over to one side, they had all this food laid out. It was like a smorgasbord or something like that, like a cafeteria. They had all kinds of salami sliced up, and they had sliced turkey and stuff. Oh man, I was really impressed. So I walk over to this place where I'm going to eat, and I'm getting in line there with a whole bunch of people. And all of a sudden, out of the crowd comes Freddie Roller. Now, who is Freddie Roller? Well, Freddie Roller was the other office boy. There were 2 office boys in this office, see. And I was one, and Freddie was the other. Well, now Freddie had also gone back to school, and Freddie and I were exactly contemporaries. See, so Freddie had gone back to school, And he had apparently got invited too. So here's Freddie. I said, "Hi, Freddie." And he said, "Oh, hi, how are you?" I said, "Hi, Freddie." He said, "Oh, man, what a party." He said, "Oh, wow, it's really groovy." And I said, "Yeah, friend, what's going on?" He said, "Oh, you ought to see." "Oh, man, it's Mr. Grant Stinko." "Oh, wow, you ought to see him over by the Christmas tree." And, wow, hey, Mr. Clevenger. So I said, "Yeah, really?" He said, "Yeah, come on, let's go over and get a drink." I said, "Drink?" He said, "Oh, yeah, they're free drinks." Well, I didn't drink, I was a kid. Either did Freddie Roller, by the way. So we go over, and sure enough, they've got this bar set up, and there's a guy behind it, and he's just serving anybody who comes up and says, "Give me a drink." It's free drinks. So I go up to the bar, and there's thousands of other people. I finally get up there, and I said, "I'll have a Coke." And he said, "Okay, I want Coke." And he puts a Coke in a glass. Freddie gets a Coke. You know, the idea of a free Coke when you're 16 is it's a pretty big thing. So I quickly drank the Coke, and I'm back in line. So I knocked down 5 quick Cokes because they were free, and I'm burping away there. And so me and Freddie go over to the food department now. Well, we get in line for the food, and they had these paper plates, and we start walking down the line, and the guys, they've got these guys that are catering the things. See, so they're giving you the salami, and they're giving you the sliced turkey, and they're giving you the meatballs and stuff. So we get down at the end. And quickly, Freddie and I squat down in the corner. We eat our food like mad. Remember, 16-year-old kids, see, so we eat our food like crazy. We get back in the line again. And we go through the line about 3 times. It's free food. And in the meantime, of course, there's a great big crowd. The band has started to play, and they're dancing, and stuff is going on. Well, it was about then that I began to suspect. Now, I just suspected. Now, it wasn't a real thought. It was a suspicion. You know how I think man is basically an animal. I mean, he has instincts. And I had suspected that this was not exactly what I thought it was going to be, and there were strange things going on here. And I see a lot of guys sitting around. They had little tables sitting around, and they're talking. And I began to recognize faces from the mail route, and there were guys I didn't know who they were. They were just sort of big, fat-faced guys that sat at these various offices, in Mr. Clevenger's office, and Mr. Grant's office, and Mr. Snyder's office. There were all these different guys, these guys that wore suits and sat around and drank coffee during the day and made phone calls and got a lot of mail and stuff. And they were grown-ups. See, they were very official types. But they're all sitting around now, and they're drinking, and they're all drinking scotch. One thing that everybody seems to drink at office parties is scotch. I kept hearing them talking about scotch. Now, they never drank scotch at my house. My old man, if he drank anything, he drank beer. And once in a while, he'd drink bourbon. I always heard him talk about bourbon, but he never drank scotch. So these guys are sitting around there drinking this stuff, and they hear a lot of laughing and talking. And they'd start to wave at them. "Oh, hey, there's a kid over there. Hey, how are you? How are you? Got any mail for me today? Hey, how about the frequency report? You got the report ready?" And I'm walking around, and they see my tag, and I'm involved in the whole thing, and I start to circulate. Well, now the first thing that I noticed that really got me were that nobody looked the way they looked in the office, especially the girls. I mean, there was another ball game going on there, and all these girls were walking around, and they had these real low-cut things. Man, I'll tell you, they had stuff going for them I didn't believe. And a lot of the guys are yelling and hollering, and I'm just sort of wandering around. Me and Freddie Roller, see, we're wandering around looking at the scene. Now, this was one big room, but it had like little side rooms off of it that had potted palms in them. They were like little annex rooms that were attached. So we're wandering, and people were overflowing into these little rooms and little corners all over the place, and the band is playing. And Freddie says, "Let's go back and get some more salami." I said, "Okay, Freddie." And so we get back in the line, we get our plates of salami, we got another Coke, and that's about all we could do, So he said, let's go and look around, see what's happening. So the two of us walk around with our plates in our hands, and it was then that it happened, that I began to see. In fact, I have never forgotten that basic premise that Christmas parties have nothing whatsoever to do with Christmas, that Christmas is an excuse. Fred and I are walking in one of the little annex rooms, and we came around a corner. Well, now, these annex rooms apparently were usually closed, used for special functions, but because there were more people showed up than they expected, they had opened these extra rooms, and there were like little cloakrooms and stuff attached to these things. Freddie and I are sniffing around, We've got our paper plate full of salami and sliced turkey and our Coke in our hand. We turned the corner, and there, unbelievable, there is Mr. Clevenger. Mr. Clevenger is kissing, I mean, really, it was a fantastic scene. He is kissing Evelyn from Mr. Snyder's office. And I saw it. So we walk in, and I never thought of that. Say, holy smokes, you know. And instantly, Freddie backs out. He says, hey, come on, for God's sakes. So the two of us back out, and they're ready. You know, they were so deeply engrossed that they did not observe that we had observed them. So we're now, the whole thing has taken another turn. So we're now out in the mob again. And the Freddie is laughing. He says, oh, wow. He said, oh, man, Clevenger, oh, boy, oh, man, Clevenger, he's really, well, you know, he's cackling away, and I'm cackling away there. And sure enough, we see Dorothy there, this chick, and she's got a black dress on. She looks fantastic. And we're milling around, and we're cackling about this. See, we're laughing about the whole scene. About 2 minutes later, it wasn't more than 2-3 minutes, because we had just made it back to the place where we were going to get another Coke, when all of a sudden there was a big, well, you know the scene when you hear a sudden hullabaloo? Just something happened. It's like something happened down at the other end of the ballroom. There's a lot of people, and here you hear a lot of yelling. and Freddie and I ran back to the place, and sure enough, there is Mr. Clevenger. And Mr. Snyder has just knocked him flat. Mr. Clevenger is sitting on the floor, and his glasses are off, and he's holding his eye or something. He's holding his face like that, and Evelyn is crying. And Mr. Snyder is saying, you get up and you try that again. I'll tell you, I'll just show you whether or not you're going to mess around with that girl. I'll show you. You get up. And all the people are milling around. It's a great big crowd. And Freddie says to me, Mr. Snyder's drunk. Mr. Snyder was pie-eyed. But, man, that's exactly what made him hit Mr. Clevenger. He's probably all of his life been waiting to hit me. Somehow he's had a fantastic hatred for Clevenger. And he finally caught Clevenger making a scene with Evelyn, and he just laid one on him. Well, he is standing over him, and this great big crowd is milling around like that, when all of a sudden, through the crowd, comes another guy who was downstairs in the accounting department. He grabs Snyder by the shoulder and says, yeah, you're going to hit a guy when he's down, right? And he belts him in the gut. Snyder's glasses fly off, and within 30 seconds, there were about 9 guys swatting each other, and these girls were screaming. The band starts playing, and Freddie Roller and I ran out to the front of the place, and as we ran out, it was wild. Somebody had called, apparently, the management of the hotel, because about 5 cops are rushing through the scene there, and people are laughing, people are crying and screaming. Somebody knocked over the bar. There's a lot of ice all over the floor. Well, I finally, I figured I better just leave. I didn't like the looks of things. It just wasn't my scene. And so I said, Freddie, I'm going to go. Freddie says, oh, come on, man. He says, stay. He says, wait till the bunch comes up from the shipping department. I says, come on, Freddie, I'm going to go. So he said, you go ahead. You can go if you want. So I did. I went out, and I gave her my check, and I got my coat, and I had to walk all the way home. I had no money. And the sleet and the cold is coming down, and the rain, and it's colder, and oh man, I want to tell you, go up the front steps, and I had wreaths hanging in there. It's Christmas time, and my mother says, did you have a good time at the office party? I bet that was really interesting. I said, yeah, sure did. I said, boy, I sure did. It was really interesting. I saw Freddie Roller. She said, oh, did you see Mr. Snyder? You remember Mr. Snyder you worked for? Were you nice to him? I said, yeah. And instantly I remembered, Snyder sitting there on the ground with his glasses off, and Clevenger sitting behind him with his glasses off, and three guys from the accounting department slugging it out, and Evelyn crying. So yeah, it was very interesting. It was. It certainly was. And to this day, office parties, friends, remained interesting. And for those of you who may attend one this week or have just attended one, I'm sure, that, like the iceberg you recognized, there was a hell of a lot going on under the surface that never showed above that choppy water. So, Merry Christmas, gang. Merry Christmas, and be careful of your jaw. Remember, it's a dangerous time. This is WOR New York. We have the news coming up.